Mr. Beane, are you there?
I got it. Is this Mr. Vincent?
It is. Yeah, Sam Vincent. How are you?
Good. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah, morning for you, afternoon for us. Thank you so much for doing this.
No. Thanks for having me. I sometimes I rarely do things, but sometimes randomly things sort of touch me that I go, heck, you know what? If they're willing to reach out to me, I'd love to do this class. So, remind me what town in West Virginia you're in again, Sam?
So we're from Parkersburg, West Virginia. Nick Swisher actually is a graduate of our high school, Parkersburg High.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought. I thought it was Parkersburg. I didn't want to misspeak a little bit because I thought it was. I know Nick's from there, and he's one of my all-time favorites. So good. And I actually I have an errand to run. So in the middle of this, when I sort of flip over, it's an unavoidable. And so so forgive me on that. It wasn't something planned. So just I'll still be with us, but I just may have to sort of flip me devices here if that's okay.
Okay. Hey, no problem at all. Well, so we've got about 40 kids here that when we get going, they have plenty of questions I think they'd like to ask you. So typically how we do this, if maybe you could take a minute or two to explain your life and career, and then we'll open it up to the kids if that works for you.
Perfect.
All right. You take it away whenever you want.
Are they out there ready? Are they out there?
They are. Yeah. We got the class that they're out sitting and they can see it. They can see on a TV right now.
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for having me. I reached out to Mr. Vincent to insist that I be a part of your sports and culture class. So thanks for letting me be a part of this semester. My name is Billy Beane. I am actually, this is a good transition. I've been the executive vice president of baseball operations for the Oakland Athletics for the last 25 years. Most recently, as of November, I'm actually going to transition into more of an advisory role and turn over the day-to-day operations to our general manager, David Forrest, who's been next to me for that last 22 years and has been sort of the heir apparent and waiting in the wings. A little bit of, and I've got some other things professionally that I'll be moving on to along with baseball as well, but that's for another next year's class. A little bit of background. I was raised in San Diego, California. My father was a military officer stationed at Miramar, NAS Miramar. If you've ever seen the movie Top Gun, that's where the movie Top Gun was. My father's entire career was there at that Naval Air Station. I played 3 sports in high school. I actually didn't play football my last couple of years, but received a football, baseball scholarship to Stanford University. I was going to play quarterback in football, and I was going as an outfielder pitcher as a baseball player. I was drafted in the first round by the New York Mets. I ended up signing a professional baseball contract, played 10 years professionally with the New York Mets. Parts of started with the New York Mets, then was played also with the Detroit Tigers, the Minnesota Twins, and then finally my last year in 1989 as a player was with the Oakland A's when the A's won the World Championship. I retired as a player and entered the front office as a major league scout, which I did for 3.5 years. And after spending 3.5 years as a major league scout, I was promoted to the assistant general manager under general manager at the time, Sandy Alderson. Was under for about three years before I was promoted to the general manager in October of 1997, and was the head of the baseball operations again for 25 years until this November when I decided it was a good time to turn it over. So that's a little bit of my professional background. Again, I don't want to sort of filibuster this thing. I think maybe want to make sure I have enough time for questions and everything, and feel free to ask me anything you'd like, and I'll try and answer it the best I can.
All right. Well, perfect. That's just to give you, I think I said this in an email. We did prior to our Christmas break, we watched the movie Moneyball. So a little bit of that. Of the questions I'm sure will come from the movie. So so I'm going to open it up, and we'll just have the kids. They'll introduce themselves and kind of pass the computer around and ask you different things.
Cool. All right, great.
All right, anybody? First question. David, first question.
Yeah.
All right. We've done 2 of these interviews before. The first question every time has been David. So
Okay.
How are you, Mr. Beane?
Hi, David. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good, good, good. What is that? A Titans t-shirt or sweatshirt you have
Yeah,
on there?
you see
Tennessee
that?
Titans?
You see that right there?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah,
Um,
I do. Well,
my question for you. So after I get done playing football, I want to be a coach. So you were kind of like a coach, right? Like you kind of helped coach.
you know, I'll give a little insight. I was not really interested in coaching on the field. Once I was done as a player, I was really interested in sort of as a kid, even though I dreamed of being a Major League Baseball player, my real dream was to sort of own a baseball team and run a baseball team. So I actually wanted to get off the field, and I was a big reader. My mother and both my parents really stressed academics. And one of the things when I signed to play professional baseball that I sort of missed was the opportunity to go to a great university at Stanford University. So I was always sort of self-educating. So for me, I actually didn't really want to coach. I wanted to sort of hire and put together a great coaching staff and let them do the on-field instruction. And I sort of ran the business, which was acquiring players. So my coaching, actually, if I did any coaching, it was a mentorship as the people I've hired and the front office executives. I mean, that's sort of the coaching I've done has been the front offices and hiring guys that have gone on to run their own teams as well.
Oh, okay. So did you like that better, or did you like playing better?
Great question. And I actually get this a lot. Be honest with you, I loved being an executive better. And I'll tell you why. It was something I could do the rest of my life. And there was a lot of downtime in baseball that was really sort of hard for me to handle. I mean, there's a lot of times where I was, I really appreciated the fact that I was a Major League Baseball player and a professional baseball player, but there's just a lot of downtime that I felt like I wasn't filling in a productive way. So for me, I actually enjoyed being an executive. In fact, playing for me was a means to an end. It allowed me to get to where I really wanted to do and have an occupation that I could do for the rest of my life. No matter how good a player you are in any sport, there's always going to be a shelf life. So you have to do something else. There's nobody who plays forever. And most great careers are probably, 7 to 10 years. That's for the great ones. And many more are actually less than that. So there's a lot of life to live. And so for me, the short answer again is being executive has been the thing that I've enjoyed the most.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
What position do you play, David? Real quick.
Quarterback.
Of course you do.
Yes, sir.
all right. Anybody else? Next. All right. All right. Here you go.
What's up, Mr. Beane?
How are you?
Pretty good. So big movie fan, big Brad Pitt guy, and I'm sure you met him. So I just want to know, is he as cool as I imagined?
You know what? Usually that is the first question I get, and I always take the opportunity. Is that he's an amazing guy? Okay, and I did get the opportunity to spend time with him as they were putting together the script for the movie. He is listen, he's from Springfield, Missouri, which is the heartland. It's a small town in the middle. And when you're around somebody like him, first of all, he's very funny, he's very smart, and really good at what he does. And couldn't have been a nicer guy to myself, my family. And the guy's an international superstar. So it's really fun when people sort of bump into him randomly, how they react. And there's an old saying in life that it's when people become famous, it's not they who necessarily change, it's how people treat them. And because he's really the same guy he grew up in Missouri, and he's every bit and better than what you would expect. He's just a really humble and just a very nice person, and incredibly talented, and it was a great opportunity to be around him for a brief amount of time. He was great to my family. My oldest daughter, who you saw in the movie, Casey, was 13 at the time. He couldn't have been nicer to her. So every bit the gentleman and the great guy that you'd expect him to be. And in fact, he's even better. So that's all I can say. I have nothing but great things to say about him.
Thank you.
Anybody? All right. Here's Seth.
How's it going, Mr. Beane?
Hi, Seth. How are you?
Pretty good. I was just wondering, how did it feel to be an 18-year-old, 19-year-old surrounded by all of these other guys on a baseball team, like Major League Baseball team?
Well, but when I first signed, I'll tell you the world's a lot different today. The fact that we can have this call, with somebody from California it's great. But when I came out when I was 18, I grew up in San Diego, California. And when I signed to play professionally, I had to go to the minor leagues. And I went to a little small town in upstate New York called Little Falls, New York. And there's about 5,000 people in it. Now, when you're from San Diego, California, and then you go to spend your summer in Little Falls, New York, it's quite a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
So for me, and I was playing with a lot of college kids there, 21, 22, 23 years old. So it was a little bit of a growing up stage that summer. I was, quite frankly, pretty miserable. You'd think playing professional baseball, but when your entire graduating class is back home at the beach and you're up in upstate New York, and place you'd never been. But that being said, I grew up very quickly. And within 2 or 3 months, by the time the season was over, and all of us the minor league players were getting back together we go to Florida for our training with the Mets back then. It was great to see everybody. You grow up really quick. One of the great things about being a professional baseball player is by the time I think I was 23 years old, I had been in every state except for one in the entire country. And the only one I hadn't gone to was North Dakota. I've been to West Virginia. I've been to New Hampshire. And it's a really cool experience at that age to be able to meet so many different people from so many different states and actually play with them. Baseball really is a melting pot of people from all over the country. And my first roommate, I was from San Diego. My first roommate was from Secaucus, New Jersey, which if you guys, it's literally a bridge right across the bridge from New York City. And you couldn't have picked two people from two farther points in the country in two different ways of being brought up. But to this day, he works for the A's and is one of my best friends. And so that's the great thing. That was one of the great things about it. But it was a little bit of a culture shock at the beginning. I was born actually in the South. My father's from Montgomery and grandparents from North Carolina. So I'd spent my early years up to 6 before San Diego in the South. So being in the southern towns and being on I had seen it as a kid. Being up in the East Coast was different because listen, in San Diego, it doesn't rain during the summer. And it's raining here now in California. That's our winters, when it rains. You guys, in West Virginia, you get thunderstorms and stuff like that. Well, for me, that was like being in the middle of the winter. So it was a little bit of a change. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, but it was a great experience, but it was a culture shock when you guys all are, potentially going to college here in a year or so. I mean, some will stay in state, some will stay around town, some will do something else. But first time moving out of the house and mom isn't, helping out with the laundry and the meals. It takes a little time to adjust.
Yeah, I'm sure you learned a lot. Thank you.
You bet.
Charles. All right.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Hey, Charles, how are you?
Good, how are you? I had a quick question for you. Whenever we think of the term Moneyball, your name obviously pops up first. And I'm probably going to butcher his name, but I was wondering if you thought Paul DePodesta gets enough credit for helping come up with this, or do you think you overshadow him a little bit in that category?
Yeah, well, I'll give you, and there's no harm. Paul DePodesta, and you're not the first or the last to come up with different pronunciation. So to answer your question, first of all, one of the things that I feel, if I was going to give myself any credit for anything in my career, is not so much what I've done in terms of accomplishment. It's actually who I've hired. What I'm really good at is hiring really smart people. And so partially to answer your credit, Paul was my right-hand guy. He's still a very close friend for any Westbury. He's not far from you, everyone there in the class right now. He's the strategic, he's team strategy officer for the Cleveland Browns right now. So he's not that far from y'all. But Paul was very much a driving force and my right-hand man and 50-50 partner. I mean, listen, I had the advantage of being the guy who was the number one guy. And a lot of time the number one guy gets probably more credit than he deserves. I mean, I'm sure Bill Belichick would tell you he's been blessed with some brilliant assistants as well at New England. And I feel it's been the same way for me. So if Paul doesn't get enough credit, he should. And my David Forrest, who I just mentioned, who's been with me for the entire time, and then Farhan Zaidi, who was a young man I hired out of graduate school, who's now running the San Francisco Giants. He came after Paul. So yeah, Paul deserves a tremendous amount of credit for our success, as do the other people around me. And again, I'll continue to say I feel no shame in feeling like I've hired people around me that are a lot smarter than I am. It's been great for the organization. It's been great for me personally. So yeah, Paul's very much a reason that we had the success we did.
All right, thank you for your time.
All right. Anybody? Middle table? No. While we're transitioning to a person in the movie, obviously kind of the first half of the 2002 season, things didn't seem to be working the way you wanted. Was there concern? Were you thinking that maybe this new strategy wouldn't work? Kind of what was going on in the athletics office during that time period?
Good question, Mr. Vincent. And I'll tell you, we weren't overly concerned because it was still a very small sample size of games. And within that sample size of games, our underlying fundamentals suggested, and the data suggested, that we should have had a lot better record than we did. In some sense, we were a little unlucky. And using data as a way to make decisions allowed us to ferret it out. It's a little bit, listen, building a baseball team and using analytics is a little bit like buying stock. I mean, some stocks may have an artificial stock price that's low, and really smart people see the fundamentals and they come in and they buy it at a low price. And for us, we knew we were good, and we just knew our record at some point would normalize itself over a longer space of time. We made a few changes, but there are more changes on the fringe that really didn't affect the core, because the core in itself was still very good. And we knew, again, that we just had some bad luck. If you look at sports teams, whether it's in the NFL, if you look at baseball, one way of sort of an indication of how a team is playing is their sort of run differential or point differential. It's the NBA is the same way. And for us, the things like that, numbers like that, metrics like that allowed us to sort of stay disciplined. We didn't necessarily react to short-term results, and data allowed us to sort of stay the course. So as much as the movie and the book might have seemed like we were concerned, privately, Paul and I knew that if we just stayed the course, the worst thing we could have done was to make radical changes to a core that was actually playing far better than the record indicated.
Gotcha. All right. Anybody? All right, we're going to go to Owen, followed by Olivia.
So, Mr. B.
I just
Hi,
want to
Owen.
know, entering the league at such a young age, was there a certain player that you looked up to?
Basically my favorite player.
Yeah.
It got so funny. My favorite baseball player, which a lot of people in my generation was George Brett, who was the third baseman for the Kansas City Royals. He was one of the best hitters in the game. Went on to make the Hall of Fame. But I also was a big fan. And again, this is a name that probably not super familiar in the room, but he's a Hall of Famer. I was Dan Fouts, the quarterback of the Chargers. I was a huge San Diego Charger fan, and Dan Fouts was also sort of one of my idols, and we had season tickets to the Chargers, so I'd go and watch him. But it was certainly, I think George Brett was was sort of the playing idol. Dave Winfield was also somebody. He was a San Diego Padre when I was a kid growing up, and he was a multi-sport athlete, future Hall of Famer. So I would say Winfield and George Brett were two of the guys that were sort of my heroes growing up. And then I got to play against both of them actually when I got made it to the major leagues, and it was I was a little bit wide-eyed to watch Dave Winfield hit and George Brett hit, and then get to play with other Hall of Famers. I played with Kirby Puckett with the Twins, and guys who like Mark McGwire with the A's, who may someday be in the Hall of Fame, Dennis Eckersley. So it's kind of cool when you have sort of heroes, and the next thing you know, you're riding on a bus with them to a stadium. It's a pretty good life.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Sorry, Joey. All right.
How are you?
Hi, is this
My
Olivia?
name's Olivia. Yeah, my name's Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
I was just wondering, were you like surprised when people wanted to make a book and then a movie about you?
I'll answer both of those. Okay, so the book, actually, we didn't want either one of them. Okay, because the book, actually, Michael Lewis, who's very famous for some other things even after that, if he wrote The Blind Side and everything, he actually kind of fooled us a little bit. He made it sound like he was just going to write a newspaper article. So he gained access in a very sneaky way. And over time, he kind of, after, we thought it was just going to be a newspaper article in the New York Times. And we really liked hanging out with him. He's a brilliant guy. And over time, he privately figured out that this was a really interesting story in his opinion, and decided. So when he told us he was going to write a book, when I say us, me and Paul DiPodesta, we were kind of scared out of our minds because we had no idea what he was going to write. And he was with us every minute. Can you imagine every conversation that you had privately of all of a sudden it might be in a book? That'd be a little bit scary. So we were really worried about some of the stupid things we might have said, and we still did. So the book was something Michael was really kind of cagey and sneaky about. And it was pretty a little overwhelming because, one minute we're baseball executives, the next minute we're, the subjects of books that was the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. But when the book came out, the people who read it were a lot of Wall Street people, business executives. It really didn't sort of hit the classrooms for a few years. Business schools started teaching it. Then what happens when a book, every bestseller that's made, usually what happens, any bestseller, even now, immediately movie companies will usually buy the rights to it. They don't always make it, but they usually buy the rights. And the rights for Moneyball were purchased by Sony Pictures. And I didn't really want the movie to be made. I did everything I could because everyone says now it's great because Brad Pitt played you. But think about somebody, Olivia, if they said, "Hey, Olivia, we're going to do a movie about you." Well, the first thing you're really stressed out about is who's going to play you, right?
Yeah.
Like, because whoever plays you. So we didn't know who was going to play. Myself and Paul didn't know who was going to play us. And so when they said it was Brad Pitt, I kind of went, okay, well, that's not bad. But there was no, before that, I didn't know. And listen, if it ends up being a really bad movie, it's kind of forever. And, so you don't have, and I didn't have much control about the movie. So it was a little bit overwhelming at the time. And I had my daughter, Casey, who's the girl in the movie. She was 12 at the time. And when the movie came out, she was going to college. She had just entered college, and it was kind of overwhelming for her. She's getting calls from people from all around the world, and so stuff like that was a little, but there was more good than bad. I wish I would have enjoyed the process more, because it was really cool, kind of some of the stuff that happened. Myself and my family and my wife and Casey and Michael Lewis, we were in the fourth row of the Academy Awards, which is really cool, and things like that. But at the time, it was a little overwhelming, and again, I'm glad I experienced it, but it sounds like it'd be more fun than but at the time you're a little bit, again, there's things that are kind of nerve-wracking. So as I get older, I really appreciate it. And the good thing is that the people who made the movie are really good at what they do. And so when you get to see this movie 10, 11 years later, it's a good movie, not something that's absolutely horrible. And I get to do classes like this. So, but I wasn't really that excited about a book or a movie, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Olivia.
All right, moving on around.
Now,
right.
Mr. Benson, what is
Yes, sir.
is this a junior class, seniors? Is it a mix of
So
different?
we kind of have 10th through 12th graders. There's 3 sections.
Okay.
2, the kids get high school credit, and then we work with WVU that we have 1 where we move kind of a different pace where they get college credit. So kind of cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, here's Donovan.
Hi, Mr. Beane. I was wondering,
Hi,
what was
Donovan.
it like whenever you first got called up to the major leagues?
It was incredibly nerve-wracking. I was in New York City. I was playing for the Mets. I got called up in 1984, which seems like a century ago to this classroom, I'm sure. And it was exciting, as you can imagine. The Mets were a very, very good team. They're a good team. They're a young team that was really on the rise. And most of the players in the big leagues at that time I had come up with through the minor leagues. So all I remember is my first major league at bat was against it was against the Pirates, maybe. It was Phillies. It was against the Phillies. And I think you guys don't remember, but there was a submarine pitcher named Kent Tekulve who threw submarine. And I was told I was going to go pinch hit. And I suddenly got an incredible headache between the manager, Davey Johnson, telling me that I was hit and then going up to the plate. And my first major league at bat lasted all of about 10 seconds because the first pitch Tekulve threw to me, I grounded out like on a one hopper right back to the pitcher, and I was out immediately. So it was exciting. It was a little bit of a relief. You dream, but it was very fleeting. And quite frankly, I always say this to people: when you're a baseball player, your first games, you're really nervous in a major league. Imagine playing in front of 50,000 people, right? When you're 21 years old, it is nerve-wracking. But what's really nerve-wracking as a baseball player when you're hitting isn't hitting, because when you on a major league stadium, the field all looks kind of the same as you did when you played in Little League. There's a pitcher, there's people out there, and there's not really a whole lot in the background. What's really nerve-wracking in your first major league games is when you go to the outfield, then you get to see the whole stadium in front of you. That's what really sort of hits you that you're in a major league baseball game, is when you're in the outfield and you can see everybody in front of you. Hitting, it's like being in Little League. You see the shortstop, you see the second baseman, you don't see a whole lot behind that you haven't seen your whole life. But when you're in the outfield and you look up in the stands and there's 50,000 people in New York City, that's when you go, holy cow, what am I doing here? So, but I feel really fortunate to have had the opportunity to play and play with some amazing people and do something, quite frankly. Imagine as a kid, loving something as a kid, and then for the rest of my life, somebody is going to pay me to be a part of that sport, of that business. I mean, it happens very rarely that somebody's childhood passion is a way of making a living and supporting your family and doing something that you love. So I feel very, very fortunate.
Thank you.
While we're transitioning to the next student here, you talk about you've hired lots of people around you. I know some of these students are interested in working in sports, and they may not play Major League Baseball to open that door. What would be your suggestions on what to do in college or right out of high school? What would be your suggestion if you have an interest in working in sports?
Well, actually, one of the great things and a good question, Mr. Vincent, is that the great thing about the book Moneyball, and you touched on something there in your question, is that it made working in sports a meritocracy. Previously, for years and generations, baseball was very much an insider's game. If you played the game, you were hired, and usually you ran the team. You sort of took the next step. We really didn't hire people from the outside. It was just if you played, you were therefore assumed to know the business really well. The one thing about the book Moneyball, what it really did was it created a meritocracy. the best and the brightest, it didn't matter if you played or not. And in fact, you know, we had the question from Olivia. The great thing about the impact of the book is that people who are running baseball teams are very much unlike people like myself. I'm an ex-player. The people, when I first started running teams, a lot of them were ex-players and people who'd been in the business. But right now, people who run baseball teams are really just incredibly bright young men and young women that maybe 25 years ago didn't have the opportunity to get into baseball because they did not play. Because now, you know, putting together a baseball team is like, is almost like, I mean, you have to have a math background. I'm not have to, but it's certainly one of the things we look for with our analysts, and the analysts now are running baseball teams. And the short answer is we are trying to hire the same people that Google, Goldman Sachs, you know, banks are trying to hire, and tech firms are trying to hire the same skill sets. So the thing that I would say as an encouragement is that it sounds like we're beating a dead horse here, but you know, listen, the math skills and the writing skills, all the academic skills, which you normally wouldn't associate with sports, are now the things we're looking to hire. We don't necessarily hire people like me who are ex-players or ex-athletes. I mean, there's something that I would bring to the table now, but it's very applying to a sports team now is very much like applying to any other business. And we're looking for great communication skills, which never go out of style, no matter what. The ability to sort of connect and communicate with people is always going to be important in any business. But we're also looking for quantitative skills. We're looking for writing skills. All the things that you're preaching there at school there is the skills. It's not like, hey, how good a hitter were you? Or were you the MVP on your baseball team? And as a result, young men and young women, I say young women because, you know, we've got Kim Ng down at with the Miami Marlins, who's a University of Chicago quantitative major who's running the Marlins. And we're going to have more and more females running baseball teams and sports teams because the job now requires different skills than having just played. So if that's the answer, and that's absolutely the answer. And great, listen, guys like myself, quite frankly, 10 years, I won't be smart enough to apply for this job, which is great. That means that's the progress. You know, I'm very proud of the fact that the book has really created a dynamic, diverse executive pool that is very different than it was when I started.
All right, I'm gonna have a student ask a question here again. Anybody got a question? All right, here's David again.
All right, I'm back.
And Sam, I'm gonna hey David, I'm gonna click over because I've got a high school son too who plays football at De La Salle and is a wrestler that I've got to get him over an air. And so David, while you're asking the question, I'm gonna flip over to my phone. So but I'll be listening, all right?
Okay.
Did you ask that?
All right, my question for you, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. My question for you is, if money was not like a problem for the Oakland A's, who would have been the player that you would have wanted on your team the most if you could pick one player from around the league?
Well, I'm not allowed to comment on that because it's technically tampering. Yeah, I mean, it's let's put it this way: the player or players, because there's a couple. Let me say in general, let me say this again: the players in baseball now are so talented. They're so much better than what I played. And it's really exciting the amount of young talent that's coming to the game. But listen, there's some players now that are very young players that are great players that are going to be in the Hall of Fame and go down as some of the greatest in the history of the game. You know, certainly Mike Trout is certainly one of those that comes to mind. Shohei Ohtani. There's probably 5 or 6 guys that I would like to have, and if I got any of them, you know, I would be doing. I'd be doing just fine. I mean, Aaron Judge up there in New York. I mean, incredible amount of talent, and I'm not sure I kind of know who my first choice might be, but if I didn't get my first choice, my second, third, and fourth would still be pretty good too. Because again, the players, you think about Aaron Judge, you play football, this guy's 6'7", about 275 pounds, playing 7. You know, that's the guy you like to have at your left tackle for you, right? He's the center fielder for the New York.
Yeah,
pretty incredible. The athleticism, yeah. And Mike Trout, he's a guy that 30 years ago would have been a running back at Ohio State University. I mean, he's one of
Yeah.
the fastest guys in the game, the strongest guy. That's the type of athletes we have now in baseball, which is really cool.
Thank you.
What's up, Mr. Bean?
Hi, how are you guys? I'm going to be clicking over here in a sec, so I apologize. So just go. Yeah, I'm just. I had an unforeseen errand I have to run. So, but
No
but
problem.
I'm listening.
All right. So my question was, why did you decide to stick with the A's, even though, money and all that stuff? Why did you decide to stick with them?
Mainly because they're going to let me in on the other side. My whole family's out here in California, and I didn't want to make a decision based purely on money. My parents were out here, my wife's from out here, my children were out here, and the idea of just sort of moving to the other side of the country, just for my own sort of professional, for me professionally, just didn't seem like a good reason. And again, honestly, like when I had the chance to go to Boston, I mean, as it turned out, Boston ended up getting the right guy. They got Theo Epstein. And Theo Epstein ended up winning multiple championships. So it all turned out for me, and it was really more of a personal decision. And again, when your family is all based on the West Coast, going to the East Coast just didn't seem like a great idea at the time. Now, as it turned out, my oldest daughter, Casey, ended up going to school out there in Ohio. So she ended up leaving when she was 18 anyways. But for me, it was all personal. Hey, could you ask Mr. Vincent if he could let me into the on the other Zoom link?
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, then I'll
the
flip
thing up here at
over.
the
There
top.
we go.
Yep. All right, that should hopefully.
There we go. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Yep. All right.
All right, guys. Yeah, I apologize. What I'll do is I'll flip video off for a second until I get my spot, if that's okay. But I still got you guys.
Yep, sounds good. Anybody got a question?
All right.
While we're transitioning, obviously Parkersburg, Nick Swisher is a huge name for us. Can you talk a little bit about what you all, when you drafted Nick, saw in him and kind of how things turned out in Oakland for Nick Swisher?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Nick, because he's in all my years here, he's one of my all-time favorite A's. And if you've read the book, he's actually a bigger part of the book than he was of the movie. But Nick is one of my all-time favorites. First of all, he's an incredibly energetic, dynamic personality. And he's a great guy. He comes from a baseball family. His father, Steve, played in the big leagues. And so for me, it wasn't just that he was a good and talented player, because he actually had all the skills that we wanted in a baseball player. He had power, a switch hitter. He had great strike zone judgment at Ohio State University. And I sort of, the year he was coming out of college, kind of became a little bit obsessed with him, because I just thought he was the perfect A's player. And a funny little story, when we were drafting him in the year we drafted him, actually I just gotten a border collie puppy, and I came close to naming him Swish, and I realized that probably wasn't a good idea, because it would show a little favoritism. But Nick is, to this day, I mean, I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to meet him, but it's just a really passionate and just a great kid. I say kid, he's getting older now, but was one of my all-time favorite A's. And it's great to see him, not only have success as a major league player, but also have success, but have success as an announcer now on Fox. As if you guys have seen him on Fox, he does the Fox Sports Network right now during the baseball season.
All right. Anybody got a question? Grant? All right. Here's Grant.
Hey, Mr. Beane. I was just wondering, what
Hi.
advice would you give to high school athletes that are going to go play college ball?
Oh, well, I'm sure you've probably heard it way too many times. The thing I think about athletics, which is so great, is it gives you the opportunity to do, go places you never would have, potentially gone before. But it doesn't, it really doesn't happen unless you've got the academics to go along with it. And I mentioned earlier that I was accepted to Stanford. And let's be honest here, I was a good student, but athletics were certainly one of the things that helped me get it. I would have never had a chance at a university at the level of Stanford had I not had good grades and been a good athlete. So for me, I just think, for my parents, once I was, sort of received the athletic scholarship, they kind of just, that's kind of why they introduced me to athletics. Anything after that, I was lucky enough to make a career. Anything after that, I think they just thought was a bonus. So, take advantage of the athletics, but make sure that the academics are backing it, because you won't be able to take full advantage of it if you don't have the academics. But the great thing about sports is the teamwork associated with it, the people that you meet, now, whether it be in high school or college, or some of the people are going to be friends for the rest of your life. And that's what's pretty much not unique to sports. The military has it as well, but one of the great things about it.
All right, thank you.
All right. While we're moving on here, can you talk a little bit about, we researched a little bit before break about you. Can you talk about your new role with the athletics and kind of, I've read things on trying to build a new stadium in Oakland and kind of what your job is now?
Yeah, well, I just won't be handling the day to day. I'm still very much involved on it, but I'll be turning over sort of the daily decisions over to David Forrest. It allows me, I've been very involved in some European soccer teams over the last 10 years. I'll start to focus on them a little more. I'll still be involved in the A's again, but not to the level where I'll be handling the day to day. Again, my well-deserved right-hand guy, David Forrest, will be doing that. So it'll be more of an advisory position. I still maintain an ownership piece for the A's, but the daily sort of, running everything every minute of the day is just something I'm going to take a step back from.
Gotcha. All right. Anybody? All right. Here's Joey again.
All right. So heard you talk about the Chargers. Being a Chargers fan, I'm sure although that is, I'm sure, been hard for you. It sounds like you're a big sports guy. TCU Georgia coming up. What do you think's gonna happen? Or not? Admit. All right. It's a Michigan thing. You there? Big fan.
All right, Mr. Beane, are you there?
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I had juggling something. I had a little cut. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you. All right. We're going back to Joey here.
All right. Can you hear me? You there?
Oh, Joe. Yeah, go ahead. I got you loud and clear.
All right. So heard you talking earlier. You were a San Diego Chargers fan. As hard as that may be for you, sounds like you just love sports. You're a sports guy. We're sports guys. I want to know, TCU Georgia coming up. What do you think's going to happen?
Oh man, I will love college football more than I love any sport. So, first of all, I'm a huge USC football fan, so I was dying watching that game the other day. If anyone saw that Cotton Bowl, and then it was killed me to see Utah beat them. So, but don't get me started on that. Man, I'll tell you what. I think, listen, the head's got to say Georgia, right? Because that's, Georgia. But I'll tell you what, I was shocked that TCU, how well they played against Michigan. I really thought that Michigan was going to just outmuscle them, and TCU just went toe to toe with them. And it was probably the best college football day that you could have. At least I remember in my lifetime, those two games. But God, my head, yet the head kind of says Georgia, what the heart would say TCU. So I don't know if that helps you at all, Joe, but that, Max Duggins, seems to come up with a big play, as does Stetson Bennett with Georgia. So I'll be locked in because I'm a massive college football fan. So I'm guessing if you're, I know Mountaineers country where you are now, but I'm guessing there's a lot of Ohio State fans probably in that room too, right? Because you're not too far from Ohio State, right?
Yes. I'm a West Virginia fan,
Yeah, so
but there are a lot of Ohio State fans here.
yeah, it's not too far. Yeah, well, I get that. So, but yeah, I was an SEC. The SEC football. Of course, it's starting to spread out a little bit. I mean, but SEC football is about as good a sports league as you can find in the world, in terms of the athleticism, the athletes, and then the passion for that is just incredible. You could turn, if you had SEC season tickets and could go to a different game each week, you wouldn't find a bad one. So, but I'm a massive, and again, I'm not a gambling man at all. I'll just be watching it. Sonny Dykes was here. He's the TCU coach. He was the Cal coach for a few years. So I got to meet him when he was here coaching at Cal Berkeley. So it's kind of neat to see him have some success so quickly at TCU.
Yep. I did watch Cotton Bowl. USC, terrible collapse, but not really surprised. Lincoln Riley can't. Wow. Defense are terrible. So wow. I think you know that.
But hey, listen, he had a great first year, and it's sure fun watching Caleb Williams and some of those receivers. Yeah. So I'll give him a couple of years. He came in late and put together a pretty good team. So, I'll try and go with my heart and say that they'll have the number one defense within a couple of years. How's that?
Yeah. I mean, Pac-12. We'll see.
Yeah, well, you know what? If you want to win the Heisman, Lincoln's not a bad place to go. He's have 3 Heisman trophies, I think, under his watch. So he's doing something right.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
Also, who do you think's gonna win the Super Bowl?
Oh man, okay. Well, I get to go with my heart on that one because I'm a Charger fan because I grew up in San Diego, but I've been in the Bay Area now for almost 30 years, so I've become very close friends with the personnel. John Lynch, the GM of the Niners, is actually from my hometown, and we're friends. And I got a lot of friends in the Niners. I just happen to think the Niners are incredibly talented, so I'm going to go with the 49ers. And again, that's a little bit with my heart, but they're a pretty special group of players, and it's kind of fun watching the Brock Purdy play quarterback for him. So I'm kind of rooting for the Niners.
Yeah, Chargers. I think they're a dark horse team, but they'll find. They're probably gonna. I think they'll find a way to charger it up again. As a Bengals fan, I hope they win, but I do think the Niners are the most complete team in football. We'll see what Brock Purdy can do in the playoffs.
Yeah. There you go. Well, it should be good. Yeah, you bet, Joe. Yeah, I see you look like you got that Bengals rep sweatshirt going there.
Yeah. All right. Anybody got a question? I'm gonna ask a baseball question. And the last few off seasons, teams have been given 10 and 12-year contracts, hundreds of millions of dollars. Do you think that's a smart investment? Do you think? I know you talked, and I agree that some of those are Hall of Fame players, but kind of that trend in baseball, is that going to continue?
Yeah, well, listen, the chase for talent in sports when players become free agents, they've earned the right to sort of become part of an auction. And, sports in general is a very, very healthy business and has consistently been healthy for the last 3 or 4 decades. If you look at, even during recessions and things like that, teams have always, the price, the value of teams and, media rights have, by and large, continued to go up. So, I mean, the salaries of the players are being driven by the whole, the sort of the health of the entire industry. So, listen, some of them work out, some of them don't. But listen, I think it's a great thing. And by and large, again, the athletes have a very small time that they can earn this money. And so, all power to them. But then when they become a free agent, that they've take their services to where they want to go or be who the highest bidder is. But again, history will tell you some end up being good deals, some end up being great deals. but that's the sort of the nature of the beast. And guys like myself get fired for making the wrong decisions if we do too many poor contracts. Now, the one thing about being in Oakland is we haven't had the opportunity to engage in some of those, bigger auctions. But Brian Cashman of the Yankees is a good friend of mine, and he's arguably one of the greatest executives of all time when you look at his record. And he's got to engage in it, and he'll tell you some of his free agent deals have been good and some of them have been bad. But at the end, what really matters is whether you win or lose. It's not the individual contract that you do; it's whether you win and you're in the playoffs every year. So,
Gotcha. All right, we're running out of time. Anybody, if you want a question, last chance. Donovan, no. All right, our school day is almost over here. A few years ago, I had a student who kind of said, this should be the last question. I kind of like it. You hit on this a little bit earlier, but if we have a lot of high school juniors and seniors here, if you were to give one or two pieces of life advice to a high school student getting ready to graduate, what would that be?
oh man, I will only give my own experience. Is that I think that this is going to sound odd, but when I first got out of high school and I was playing pro ball, I was in such a hurry that I was impatient with myself a little bit. I think it impacted my baseball career a little bit. Is that the thing you're doing at 23 may not be the thing you do, the occupation or the interest you have in when you're for the rest of your life. So exercise a little bit of patience, and play the long game, I guess, is a little bit, things that you do now, think of in the long term and make decisions with the long game in mind, if that makes any sense. And when you're my age, it's easier to say that the long game when you're 17, 16, 17, or 18 may sound maybe a year or two, but I can tell you that there's decisions now that may take 3 or 4 years before you actually see results. But if you sort of, again, for me, the long game is hard to sort of get your arms around when you're that age. But in the end, that's the advice I would give, is that, where do you want to see yourself in, 15, 25 years, not necessarily in 2 or 3 years, and what's going to help you get there, and what are the decisions you make? Because ultimately, the decisions you make in life determine where you end up. I mean, you have a lot more, some things are out of your control, but a lot of it is in your control. And so, and for me, I would have probably been a little more patient with myself. I think it helped me in some ways, but I also think it hurt me. And I would just say, exercise some patience and don't feel like you have, that when you're 23 years old, you're going to have your entire life figured out. Sometimes a little bit of, trial and error is kind of helps you get to the place that you want to go.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it and learned a lot, and are very grateful that you took the time to do this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vincent. I thank the class for having me. It's been an honor. I wish everyone the but listen, it's been an honor to be in the class, and best of luck to everybody. And thanks for having me.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you, guys. All right.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.